Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin, and today on the show, we're talking about what is happening at specialty retail with the president of the Grassroots Outdoor Alliance. But first, please follow and rate the Rock Fight wherever you're listening on any podcast app. That 5-star rating and clicking follow, that helps us out a lot. Also, if you checked out Gear and Beer, that's our other podcast here on the Rock Fight Podcast Network. You can find it on the app you're using right now. And lastly, we want to hear from you. Send us your feedback by sending an email to myrockfight@gmail.com. All right, let's start the show. Good morning, everyone. I'm recording this today at a hotel in Missoula, Montana, because I'm at the Outdoor Media Summit, where on the day that this episode is released, I'll be moderating a panel featuring today's guest on the show, and that would be Gabe Meyer from the Grassroots Outdoor Alliance. Longtime rock fighters will recognize the high regard in which I hold independently owned outdoor specialty retailers, and that stems from my own time working retail, but also from early in my outdoor industry career when I learned that step one to having a product find success is to sell it in at specialty retail, and step two is to sell through at specialty retailer. And then you could sell something to Dick's or REI to make up some volume, but legitimacy for your brand and your products meant success at the local gear shops that make up what I consider to be the lifeblood of our industry. But there have been a lot of changes in the past few years. In the 2010s, direct-to-consumer became the hot trend, with many outdoor brands thinking that they could grow by diminishing their wholesale partners and selling direct to consumers. Many new brands started on a D2C model only, and many existing brands changed the rules, which impacted everyone and definitely hurt many mom-and-pop outdoor stores. Between the pandemic and other factors, wholesale is again on the rise, thankfully, but through it all has been the Grassroots Outdoor Alliance, a membership-based organization with 104 specialty dealers who has become a leading voice for the industry from the gear shops we all love. Their president is Gabe Meyer, who is joining me on the show today to talk about specialty retailers, events and trade shows, and why gear shops are a crucial component to a healthy outdoor industry. Welcome back to the Rock Fight, where today it's the state of specialty retail with the GOA's Gabe Meyer. All right, well, we are joined now by the president of the Grassroots Outdoor Alliance, Gabe Meyer is here. Welcome to the show, Gabe.
Thanks, Colin. Super happy to be here.
You are in Cody, Wyoming. Have you seen the other person who lives in Wyoming today, or not yet? Haven't bumped into that person.
Yeah, just a few of us down at the coffee shop. It definitely has a very small town, feel to it for sure.
Well, let's get into it, man. So we're here to talk about specialty retail, and I've described independent specialty retailers repeatedly, probably before I had a podcast, and I think I will continue to describe them this way, as the tastemakers of the outdoor industry, crucial to our past and future. So sitting in the seat that you're in as president of the GOA, I mean, let's just start broadly. What have you learned in your roles that make specialty shops just crucial to our industry? Or are they not? Am I wrong? Maybe you don't think that they are. Breaking news on the Rock Fight.
No, I'll even go a little bit more broad than just the outdoor industry. I think, for me personally, the reason I am here, like being here and have enjoyed working at Grassroots is getting my start at a local shop. And I think local independently owned retail in general, whether it's the outdoor industry or any other tangential industry, they're just community connection points. They have this amazing ability for people to be great in their community. It's a place where people go to, see the rest of the folks in their community, and they just have a different vibe. Not that big box retail and, online retail doesn't have its place, but specialty retail just hits a little bit differently for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of going from that. I mean, I think, Owen mentioned it on your podcast a few episodes ago, specialty retail is the place where you do go to get, connected to here's all the other groups of, individuals in my town or my community that are doing these things. Oh, here's all the best places to go do them. You run into oftentimes a staff member that says, here's, great. You're looking at doing that product. I've used that one, this one, and this one. Here's what I think are pros and cons of all of them. You just get a much deeper insight, and I think, that's what definitely makes it special.
Yeah, I remember one of the first times I can remember actually connecting the dots on this. It's like my original career was at a Play It Again Sports, which actually occurred to me recently with all the
How
talk about
fascinating.
secondhand. I'm like, God, Play It Again's
Uh-huh.
been doing this since like the 80s or
Forever.
whatever. Like, right? I need to probably get someone from I don't know who owns, if it's still, is it Winmark? Whoever owned Play It Again back in the day. We got to get somebody from there in. But anyway, meaning I know the franchise, but meaning the brand. But then I went on and I had a very brief, like 3-month stint at a Nike factory store. This is like 1996 or something like that. And I remember working for someone at that store who had been at a run specialty shop and talked about how that's what makes a store great. It's like the places where you want to go and hang out, even if you don't have anything to buy.
Yeah.
And remember, then I went back to another Plate again, and then ended up at Eastern Mountain Sports, and that's why I've been a defender of Eastern Mountain Sports, even though it's a chain. Just because it kind of fostered that same vibe. Like you just want to go be there. Just like, oh, what are you gonna? I'm just gonna run down to the store. What are you gonna get? Nah, I don't know. Just gonna hang
Just going
out.
to say hi to
Gonna look at
people.
right, gonna look at guidebooks. Like talk to, Sally behind the counter. Like, oh, you been out kayaking lately? Like those kinds of things. And I think that's such a weird. It seems like a simple thing, and almost when you're talking about P&Ls and forecasts and all the business part of it and the numbers driven side of it, it probably doesn't seem that important, but that's truly like representative of the community in a commerce point of view.
Yeah, I think it continues to be that touch point for everybody that sends you back to, this isn't just about profit. This isn't just about a transaction. Like there's a much deeper connection here and authenticity.
Yeah. Right.
I think also as it impacts the industry, like I don't know how many sales managers, reps, brand leadership folks I've talked to that got their start in specialty. It tends to be one of the really important places where, like my journey was, working at a local shop here, getting kind of connected into the industry and learning about learning about the industry and all of the potential ways that I could apply my education and my background and parlay it into a career in which I had no idea that existed before that.
Well, but I do think we're also kind of at a weird time now when you kind of step back and look at it, where the value that we're describing, I think, is the same as it's ever been. But it also feels like gear shops have kind of found themselves placed on the back burner by many outdoor brands who are favoring bigger retailers. And there might be some recency bias here, as I was pretty critical on a recent episode about, the collaboration between Smartwool and Ultra. But just from your seat, looking on it, how do you feel the landscape has changed? I guess for shops in general, but really shop owners over the past decade.
Probably as with all businesses, I think employment's been a big hot button issue as it relates specifically to the outdoor industry. Grassroots did some talking about this, or specialty retailers have, but I think the proliferation of pro deal things somewhat took away one of the biggest benefits, or has made it difficult there. But I think shops kind of handling employment, no question, brand competition and just digital commerce has been a huge change in the landscape. And I think it's not all bad. I think that, the overarching message there is that many of our stores believe very much in the service that they're providing. And I think aspirationally want to keep growing that. Mm-hmm. And so when they're given a fair shake, they do just fine. It's when they get undercut in those channels that makes it really difficult. And I would say lastly, like just the number of skills needed to run a shop has changed dramatically over the last 10 years. You had social media in there. You had, to the laundry list of things that shop owners were already doing. And now all of a sudden you have to have additional marketing skills and additional skills and, kind of how you get your store out there and how you drive foot traffic. And so it's just broadened the amount of things that you need to be really good at to, be truly successful anyways.
Yeah, you mentioned digital commerce and to that point, that's probably another one of those skills that you probably should have as a shop owner, right? Like even better if you can sell online in addition to just
making sure you have
for
a good
someone
website.
To walk through the door. Yeah. Right. But, I think about where I've defended Ibex over the years and Ted Manning's decision to take them, to a D2C only model, and whether the 2017, 2018, that's been really criticized after the fact. But I think people kind of forget what it was like then. I mean, that was seemingly the future. I mean, like everybody talked about, no, you got to be online. No one's going to go to stores anymore. Why would you? And I think those were very easy dots to connect just as a consumer. Think about how we mostly consume things now, especially through the pandemic and coming out of it. It's so easy now. And it was only through things like the pandemic and kind of after the fact, realizing that like, oh no, actually, I really do enjoy that. All the things we just talked about, going into a shop, having that brick and mortar experience, the diversification of how I want to procure my goods, or just even have an experience that we've realized that, okay, the future isn't just D2C, but it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a blend of it. But then as we now are in this weird spot where this is kind of what I'm saying about the kind of forgotten specialty dealer in a way, because it's like, okay, great, we have big box, we got D2C, and then like, oh yeah, we got these little wholesale accounts we kind of have to worry about over here. And so I can only imagine that is something that is an uphill battle that shop owners are fighting against. I
Yeah.
also do feel like things are cyclical, and I would imagine there's going to be a kind of specialty resurgent kind of movement coming the next few years. I feel like it has to be. Are you hearing any kind of feedback on those things from your members?
I mean, it's interesting as we look at like the general landscape right now. I mean, I don't have great maybe sales numbers for, where big box is at. We know that e-commerce has been struggling. I mean, you look at it across retail, like anybody that's been playing in the 3P Amazon space in the past few years has struggled immensely.
Yeah.
So like that's changed. I feel like if the pandemic were anything, it was the perfect off ramp into digital commerce if it was going to be, and it
Right.
physical
Like, well,
retail
now's the
snapped right
time.
back, right?
Right. Yeah.
And just demonstrated how important that really is. And I think when you talk about specialty, like, I mean, everybody in the outdoor industry, I think right now, to a degree, I mean, there's, bits and pockets within, but it hasn't been, the best business cycle. I think specialty is probably doing the best or holding their own in that. I mean, we have a lot of stores that have had great years still this year. Overall, as a group, we're down just a little over 2% across specialty retail. And while it doesn't represent all specialty retailers, we do feel like it's 100 stores across the country is a pretty good snapshot
Right.
of what's going on. Yeah, I think they're actually doing pretty well in the face of it, and demonstrating that there's basically that it has little to do with how brands look at it or how retailers even look at it. It's what are customers looking to do and what kind of experience do they want to have. And what we keep seeing reinforced is that, yeah, people care about going and having like great retail experiences.
Do you think brands are really still understanding the value here? I mean, do you get the sense when you talk to brands, especially as, like preparing for things like Connect and everything, I'm sure they will say, oh yeah, we love our dealers or whatever. But I think, again, I referenced the Ultra Smartwool thing. And I think the interesting thing coming out of that was, the feedback on the specialty front. I mean, of course, our guy Wes Allen put a nice post up about it yesterday, and I think, but it was and Owen Comerford was sort of weighing in on it today. All the sort of main voices we hear on these topics, but I
Yep.
think it's true. It doesn't feel like it was very well thought out of terms of like how would you take something like this to market without kind of anticipating some blowback, right? So
Yeah.
do you feel a sense just, and I don't want to shine a light just specifically on Smartwool or Ultra, but just largely speaking, do you think that they see the value that these
I,
brands?
I keep feeling we're in a moment of change for sure. I've had more conversations with brands in the past year than any other time I've been at Grassroots for, over the past 9 years, of brands recognizing like, hey, this is an important channel to us, and truly, how do we support it well?
That's good
And
news.
like you said, while that's probably been the dialogue for several years, you can tell when there's just like, no, we really mean it though. And we're seeing shift. I mean, I had one of our brands just a few months ago say, like, we've done extensive research within our building, and unequivocally, not only is the value of the community and what specialty retailers provide, it's actually our most profitable channel across our entire business. And so, I feel like this conversation could go a couple of different directions. You either talk about this really hard to measure value of specialty, which is, all the, kind of nebulous things about community and impact and how that, path to purchase and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's just like a straight, it's actually the most profitable part of your business as a value piece as well.
That's because, I mean, you think about the concessions you have to make to do some of these bigger programs and things with the larger retailers. And I imagine, yes, scale may not be the same, but profitability is really what we're looking for here, folks. So when you're looking at the specialty retailers, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think sometimes specialty gets propped up as kind of the we're doing business like it's a charity to do, business with all these retailers, and this is where we find our heart and soul. And I don't, as you were saying, like it kind of bringing up the ibex. These things have been so hard to measure up until now of what the value of products showing up in wholesale markets, and like what does that do to online sales, and how does it all work intrinsically within a brand. And so I think we're just at a point now where we're starting to get data points to be able to say like, oh, not only is this like feel good to do, it's actually good for business in general.
Well, and when we get to the events part of the conversation, I mean, that's the other thing about the industry where it's so colored by opinion and off the cuff remarks and passion, and like all well intended, but it's such everybody opinions are not short in the outdoor space. Let's just put it that way. So, but to kind of then take it from the lens of looking at the role of the specialty retailer, like back to put it more on the retailers themselves. I mean, one reason I want to have this conversation with you is it's I go look back on my days as a tech rep and the early 2000s and the dealers who exist today. And it feels like largely the same kind of roster of accounts that existed, 25 years ago. So my initial concern when I see that is, are new shops opening up? Like, are we fast approaching a day when like all these sort of old timers are going to like, well, I'm done. And they shut it down or they don't pass the keys off to somebody else. And then we have significantly fewer independent dealers with no one coming behind to refill the coffer, so to speak.
There absolutely are new specialty retail shops opening up in the outdoor space. Dana and I are working on retail applications right now. We just talked to a gentleman that his business has been open for 2 years, calling in to say, hey, how do I get connected to some resources? Awesome. Interested about what happens here. We don't have a great like data points on new stores opening, and I'm not sure that anybody really has a good handle on that. But to your point about the existing accounts, I mean, I think when we look across the 95 retailers in Grassroots, the average age is 42 years that they've been in business.
That's younger than I thought it would have been. Oh, years they've been in business. I thought you meant age of which the owner was 42. Oh,
average
that's
age
old.
That the retail store has been around.
I was 7 when most of those things started.
That by no means is a signal that they're stale or old, or so we continue to see ownership transitions very successfully, and actually in the past few years have seen more than probably the 5 or 10 years before that. So we've had 13 stores transition ownership in the last 3 years. I mean, it's a significant percentage, and a lot of those are going to either being passed down through the family. We're seeing them sold to longtime employees of the business that are getting engaged, and every once in a while, just somebody that's coming in from outside the industry. But again, in those cases, oftentimes like a husband-wife owner that are like, "Yep, we're just looking for a career change." So we continue to see ownership transitions, and they're going to family members, employees of the store that have been working there for a long time. And a lot of times, if it's not one of those two, then it's customers that have been engaged in the retail store for a long time. And coming into the business and taking over. And so, I mean, we're continuing to see kind of newness and vibrancy in just excitement around being in specialty retail.
Are there resources that exist, or is that an opportunity for if someone's like, oh, I'd be interested in opening an outdoor shop? Is that something that you provide? Does the OIA provide opportunities? Are there things out there that's not just sort of, it's a big, hard thing to do to start a business, no matter what it is. And then to do something where opening a shop, signing a lease, carrying inventory, how do you get opened as a vendor for all of these, manufacturers, brands that you want to carry in your shop? How do you hire people? I mean, that's a lot to take under. Now, imagine if you have a retail background, obviously it's a good place to start. But if it's sort of been a pipe dream for you, like what's step one?
Yeah. So I'm not aware of any organization that is providing that at a good place right now. We don't have anything formalized and, just open resources to the industry. But like I said, I mean, the gentleman that reached out today was kind of inquiring about membership.
Right.
When we encounter retailers that, are looking to open a shop or have maybe in their first year of business, we kind of have a line of like, hey, we'll just ask us a question. We were happy to connect you. A lot of times we connect them with another retail store that we feel like maybe has insight into the thing that they're looking for. And the other way Grassroots has kind of been, working around this. This isn't so much on like an opening a store, but if we have new stores, getting them plugged in to connect and having the experience of, being able to book appointments with big brands and, just get introduced to the community is kind of where we've been. But yeah, I think it's an area that probably stands to have, a decent amount of improvement and accessibility.
Looking ahead, the outdoor industry is kind of in a really interesting time. Look, we've talked a little bit about it, right? Coming out of COVID, the DTC boom, and in addition to that, you have the outdoor media is kind of largely consolidated. So the messaging, how people are getting messaging from either the industry or just the community is different than it used to be. And our events and trade show scene is being redefined almost seemingly each season. So when you're looking out past it's a lot of, inventory and economic challenges that exist currently, and it's been well documented. But again, like I said earlier about some other things, it's cyclical, right? So there's going to come a time when we are going to emerge from this current situation. How do you believe that outdoor retail is in a position of strength right now?
I think it's in a position of learning, for sure, and kind of headed towards strength. I think that's, at least from our perspective, as we see, brands getting a chance to understand how each channel affects their business overall and how that's meaningful or how it's not meaningful is really helpful. Because I feel like looking back at the last 10 years, it's like, people get angsty about like, so-and-so did this or this. A lot of it's just been testing and learning. And we're finally getting to that spot of being able to apply some of that to the future. And I think, it's hard to put a value on like a gut feeling, but I just continue to feel like there are more and more, Wes sent out an article, I think just recently on kind of partnerships moving forward. And it's like, there are more brands that are saying, hey, we understand our whole ecosystem. This is where we're going to put our effort moving forward. I think retailers have a big part to play in kind of letting some of those brands, have a second chance at like, okay, this thing happened 3 or 4 years ago, which, made me walk away from the brand. Maybe I need to give that another chance and dive back in. But it just feels like there's a lot of core and legacy brands, in the space that are recognizing the opportunity. And I think retailers too, their big aspirational piece continues to be like, are you that place that's providing the best service? Are you the place that has the expertise? Are you actively engaged in your community? I think for most retailers right now, that's true, but it's never a thing that you've solved for. It's kind of always you need to keep working on that and make sure that you are continuously bringing that value.
So last thing, you recently wrote about the national trade shows in a post that you put up on LinkedIn. And this is a topic where there's a lot of opinion on hyperbole, including on the show. So, when it comes to gatherings in the outdoor industry, just what's your 10,000 foot view? Like, how should we be approaching national gatherings right now?
Well, if you read the piece, the perspective is that, June and November in particular, as we've all known forever, are just really busy times. It's when a lot of our retailers are doing line showings for all of their, most meaningful pieces of their business. It's when a lot of order deadlines are, I think we had 28 out of our 67 brands order deadlines fell in June this past spring. So all of that work has to get done, which makes every single day in June and the first part of July and November and December just critical. Like you can't afford to do something that's not pushing you towards the goal of getting that essential business completed. And I think that hits retailers, brands, reps, a lot of people in the industry.
It's the whole deal, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think for the national gathering side of things, it's getting really specific about what the purpose is. And, I would say if the goal is to have a national gathering where everybody shows up, like just making sure that that's in a time frame in which it's actually possible for everybody to show up.
I don't know who makes a decision about like what the national gathering is supposed to be. I mean, I think we are all just default to trade shows because for the longest time it was attached to a trade show and that just seemed to work for everybody. And now to your point, we have the ability to do a lot of different things, to gather in a lot of different ways. You're allowed to have your own opinion about why you would go to any kind of gathering, whether it's a trade event or a consumer event or whatever it is. And so there's just no consensus. And it's easy. It does feel like it's starting to kind of just everyone's going like backing off into like, well, we should just let's have a bit of a trade show battle and see who comes out on top, and then that will be the new national gathering. But I think you're absolutely right. I think if there's, and not to just take a random shot at outside, because I've done that plenty on this podcast, but if there's a mistake, I think you go back to the outside festival. It's like, why'd you put it in June? Probably could have gotten like twice the amount of people if you'd put it in like August, and it's like a lot of people who couldn't come in June would then show up. And I wonder if maybe they'll address that going forward, because you're taking a consumer event and putting it up against other trade events. But so don't know who the voice is that has to say, this is why we're going to gather for this, and this is why we're going to gather for this, and this is when those gatherings are going to be. But it does feel like we could probably use a little of that. Until then, I'm assuming it will just kind of continue to be business as usual, and we'll see who kind of wins.
Yeah, I think definition of purpose. No question. In my post, I was trying to share some internal grassroots data around, like, we have 140 retailers and around 140 brands that show up to the event.
Yeah,
it's 4 days packed. It's over 8,000 hours of appointments. Like, if you stretch that out even just into individual appointments, it's weeks of appointments. So we have a lot of group retailer things going on. And so if you scale that out to a national gathering, it's like easy to see that while, we certainly shouldn't say that line showings wouldn't happen there, or order writing or that kind of business wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
It's impossible for it to be its core purpose because it just doesn't scale that way.
Right. So you mentioned your show coming up. You have Grassroots Connect happening in November. Is are there any open spots? Is it sold out? Can anybody still come? Is there open spots for anyone who wants to come, who might be listening and think they might want to come to GOA Connect?
We'll always take more retailers, and we've kind of had an open for several years now, an open invitation to, independently owned specialty retailers if they want to show up.
Non-members can attend. That was news to me this past summer, right? Anybody?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we started that really in fall of 2015 was the first time that we had Connect, which was a shift from our summit show that, and then invited guest brands and guest retailers, essentially. On the brand side, we actually closed down because of the scheduling process. We closed down, the show floor kind of months in advance. And so we operate a little bit differently in that space. But I think we had, really successful brand attendance. What's looking like we have 154 retailers, I think, that are currently coming to the show. So a little uptick for us there. We just put out a press release, and I think I was telling Dave, the guy who's helping us with it, like, it's kind of just business as usual, which is really good. Like, I'm not going to say like, oh, it's sold out and we're in this like crazy busy time. It's that, retailers and brands keep showing up and finding what we're doing there meaningful, which is good.
Right on, man. Well, and then it looks like, I guess last thing, I'm going to see you next week up in Missoula, Montana at Outdoor Media Summit. Yeah. We'll go to somebody else's show and stir some stuff up there. But, all right, man. Gabe Meyer, thanks for coming. Like, we've now had, between you and Wes, we've had like, half of the population of Cody, Wyoming on the podcast. So we're appreciate you on.
Thank you so much. It was great, Colin. Appreciate it.
All right, that's the show for today. Big thanks to my guest, Gabe Meyer. We want to hear your questions and comments about the GOA, about events, about retailers, whatever. Send your feedback to myrockfight@gmail.com. The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And here to take us out, I'm going to go see him tomorrow night when Less Than Jake comes to San Diego. It's Krista Makes with the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters. Rock Fight!